Um, Good evening, everyone. It's February 9th. This is the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Open Space. Thank you all for being here. Delegate Jacobs, let's start with your bill, the poultry litter alternative bill. I understand you have an idea for that.
Yeah, I'm going to hold that bill. We're working on some amendments right now that we're getting all the parties together, and it's not finished yet, so I'd like to hold it.
Okay, everyone, we're going to hold House Bill 455, the poultry litter alternative. Now, Patrick, which are your bills on the agenda?
The first two.
Let's take up the Queen Anne's County Sunday hunting 225. Would you, House Bill 225, this is Queen Anne's County Sunday hunting. It's a local bill. We had the hearing probably on Thursday.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion on this Queen Anne's County local bill?
I am, very concerned about the horse people and other recreation uses that this would take away Sundays, that they would have to be able to safely use the outdoors.
My camera's not on. Mr. Chairman?
Oh, Delegate Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. And I share Delegate Ruth's concern. One of my issues too, and I'm not trying to pick on the sponsor, but when the question was asked of the sponsor about the concern with respect to the impact of hunting, using, and I don't know if, I forget who even asked the question, it might have been Delegate Ruth, but someone asked the question about, the impact of people hunting on private land, and presumably, I think the question that was meant to be asked was, if you fire whatever kind of gun, what could that mean for an adjacent property owner? Depending on how far that bullet can travel, and that question was never used, which I think gets to the heart of this. And the sponsor, I think if I'm remembering correctly, answered, "Well, I don't know because I'm not a hunter." I don't think that's an acceptable answer, because that's a valid question. Is the impact, a bullet does not stay, depending on the kind of gun that's being fired, on that piece of property where it's discharged. Therein lies the concern for somebody on the adjacent property, or maybe even a couple of properties over, that's doing whatever, whether they're riding a horse or gardening or walking or whatever they may be doing. And so, look, I don't support Sunday hunting bills regardless, because I feel like, you have 6 days a week. Why do you need 7? But I am specifically concerned about the failure to answer that question.
Delegate Lehman, I noticed that James McKittrick from the Department of Natural Resources. James, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to just make the observation that under current law, deer firearm season in which someone would be shooting bullets is already allowed. That's the current authorization for Queen Anne's County.
Delegate Jacobs, did you have something?
Yeah, I got, first of all, this bill was vetted thoroughly in Queen Anne's County. It's a local bill. It was thoroughly vetted in Queen Anne's County and supported by the entire Queen Anne's County Commissioner, the group of commissioners. This kind of legislations in different counties throughout the state, and it's local courtesy. And this bill actually is more about animals and not specifically just deer. So if it's a shot shell, that a shot pellet is not going very far to begin with. It's not like a rifle bullet or a rifle slug. This is shot, and it doesn't go very far anyway. But the bottom line is, it's a local bill. It was vetted properly in the county, and all 5 county commissioners signed off on it, and I support it as well.
We do have a motion and a second. Delgado, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to support the operation because we have a deer problem particularly. There's other critters that we have problems that do crop damage, that we can't properly control the population of them. And the deer in particular are a hazard to our people in transit. How many car damages we have a year, and it's a measure to encourage Sunday hunting, or not just Sunday hunting, but family hunting, and create a new generation of hunters that you can go down for 2 days and hunt in the country. That's what Queen Anne's County is the country.
Yeah. Hey, Charles, does your district include Queen Anne's?
No, it does not.
But you're near your Eastern Shore. You're nearby.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I'm opposed.
Okay. All right. That bill, we'll take that bill to full committee. Patrick, that leaves one of your bills, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Maybe Kristen, sometime we can prioritize yours, another meeting. Patrick, House Bill 145 concerns oyster penalties. We had this hearing a couple weeks ago. We haven't brought it up in subcommittee yet. Is there any legislator who wants to talk about this bill?
I'd be happy to.
Delegate Jacobs, you'd be happy to?
Yes, I would.
All right. Remember, Jay.
The other J.
Jay
Oh.
Jacobs.
We don't have a timer on the subcommittee, you know.
15 seconds have gone by.
Maybe next week, but not this week. Anyhow, this bill, in my opinion, is not necessary. The issue that at the crux of this is not an issue that's taking place right now. You can go to, I was looking at Bay Journal, January, February edition, talks about, the biggest problem with oystering right now is prices are plummeting due to the demand. The wilder oyster fishery, the price is at $30 or even lower in some cases right now. And there's virtually very little market. There's much more supply than there is even, than there's market to sell them. So the issue that this legislation is trying to seek doesn't exist. And from research that I've done, there's actually a bigger problem on the oysters finding their way to these aquaculture leases that have not gone through the proper buy ticket process. There is existing law with existing fines that are on both sides, whether it's oysterman catching the oysters and selling them, or without buy tickets, and also with the buyer not supplying the truthful information. I was considering legislation myself this year to go after the other side of this. And when I found out what kind of penalties are already in existence, having talked with the NRP officer for about an hour, I decided not to do the legislation because I just didn't think the juice was worth the squeeze. In this case, I think you got legislation looking for a problem that doesn't exist. And for that, I'm opposed to the bill, especially the section where it talks about buyers, which I bought a lot of oysters in my career. And when it says a buyer should have known, that is a joke to make that statement in statute. So,
I noted during
know.
the hearing that it didn't sound like there had been a lot of cases. I've asked DNR how many cases there'd been, and there hadn't been many.
well, I think they mentioned in the hearing there were 2 in the last 5 years. I'm not, and I'm not sure because it's hard to get that information, but I can tell you that my research is, and what I've seen, that there's a bigger problem with oysters winding up in aquaculture operations that have not gone through the proper buy ticket process. And I think that's the bigger problem, and maybe I'll address that myself next year. We'll see how it goes this year. But right now, bottom line is there's much more supply than there is demand. The price has plummeted. It's not a problem. And you could talk with people that are on OAC, members there, and I think they'll agree with it as well. That's not something you're hearing. It's not something that's published in Bay Journal or anywhere else. If it was a problem, I'm sure you'd see it.
That was the sense I got at the hearing, that there weren't a lot of cases. Patrick, has the sponsor been working on, Delegate Wells? Delegate Wells.
Got you. Sorry. Well, I'll let Patrick answer because I did talk to the sponsor, but I'll let Patrick answer first.
I have seen no amendments.
Okay.
Oh, Delegate Wells.
Yeah, and that was my comment. Is my understanding after talking to the sponsor is that there was some conversations with a few of the watermen. I think Captain Newberry and Chip. I may be butchering the names, but I believe that they had mentioned to the sponsor they want to get some amendments to the sponsor. And so I think that perhaps we should hold the bill and perhaps get some clarity on where they are in that process.
Okay, I think that's a fine idea, and I don't sense from the subcommittee that there's, a lot of pressure to do a bill this year or do something this year, but certainly we want to give the sponsor an opportunity to tell us what she's been working on. Okay,
Jim, this Jerry, I took time and talked to a few of my oyster culture people, and they even said they didn't really have a problem. They said this really didn't need to be done. So just for that, whatever.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Delegate Ruth.
I just wondered if we could ask the Chesapeake Bay Foundation for perspective on that.
Well, we certainly could. And who's here? Robin? Allison Holden? Okay, go ahead.
I would turn it to Allison to talk about the need question.
Dr. Colden?
Thanks. So I will just mention that this recommendation came out of an aquaculture theft work group. I believe Colby is on the line as well, who was the chair of that work group at DNR a few years ago. And so, CBF was a part of that work group. So our support really stems from, the conversations and information that we learned as part of that work group. Mainly being that increased penalties would be a bigger deterrent to aquaculture theft, because a lot of times it's very hard to catch folks in the act when this is happening. So there's a lot more in terms of numbers of cases that have been brought to court and prosecuted, very few. But of course, those people who are experiencing losses but not able to get enough evidence to bring a full case is a lot larger than that. So that's where our support for the bill lies. Thanks.
Okay, we're holding this bill. We'll give the sponsor more time. And I saw, James McKittrick from DNR looked like he had something to say, but I think we'll just hold it. We've got some other bills on the agenda. And we'll talk with the sponsor and follow up. But follow up, and if you do have amendments, it's important that Patrick Tracy see them. It's important that the subcommittee gets a chance to look at them if possible. Okay. Patrick, we're going to hold that one. All right. You good, Patrick?
I'm good.
All right. Let's go on to House Bill 472. That's the glyphosate bill. There's been a lot of discussion about this recently. Delegate Ruth or Delegate Stein, do you want to talk about this bill?
Sure.
Well,
Do you want to go first? Go ahead.
So I just wanted to point out the amendments that have been submitted. The first one is, as I discussed in my testimony, to limit it only to state and local government. And, you know, then in the fiscal note, I noticed that University of Maryland is doing some research in it, and certainly, you know, more research is needed clearly. And so it was never my intent to stop that research. So I've submitted a second amendment, which would exempt research into the health and environmental effects of glyphosate.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Delegate Stein.
Yeah, my thought is that given the conflicting studies on the health impacts of glyphosate, I recommend that we send this bill to summer study.
That's something our committee controls through the Legislative Policy Committee process. And so would
Yes,
that,
I believe so, yeah.
would that involve perhaps Delegate Ruth withdrawing the bill?
Wouldn't it just change into a, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Or it could be, I don't know if it's unfavorable with a recommendation for a summer study.
Jim, do you want to jump in here? Delegate Gilchrist?
Yes.
So at one time, some of you on the committee remember that voting outcome where there could be a bill specifically referred to interim study. And a couple of years ago, we were informed that that was kind of an antiquated voting outcome, and it was suggested that it was actually requested that we not use that voting outcome. So when the chair determines the agenda for the interim, that's really the process to lay out what is intended for interim study. But there's not an official designation anymore for refer to interim study.
You know, and I was thinking it was Delegate Ruth's bill, but it's actually Delegate Young's bill, right?
It's my bill. He's listed as the sponsor, but it's my bill. And you do also have an amendment to change the sponsor if the bill should be moved. But for all intents and purposes, it's my bill.
Okay. Is there any discussion about taking this to summer study? Either, you know, I would think maybe the bill would be withdrawn and then it would go out on the report, and then so it would clear our committee, and then we would have a summer study if it, through the LPC process. Any discussion on this, Delegate Jalisi?
I just support Delegate Stein's suggestion to take it to a summer study. And I think that we could do an amendment if Delegate Ruth so wants, because I remember one of my bills, I changed it to a task force or summer study, I forget which one it was. But if the sponsor amends it, it doesn't have to be withdrawn. Kristen can confirm this, but
well, that would depend on the nature of the study. If you were doing a stakeholder work group, that would be something where you could, you know, draft amendments and propose that. For a summer study that would be conducted by the committee, that wouldn't be done through legislation. That would be done through the commitment of the committee.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
and I believe the motion on the table is basically unfavorable, and then the committee would do a summer study.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Delegate Ruth.
So first of all, you know, forgive me, I'm new to all this. What does it mean to be a summer study by the committee? I don't understand.
You know, each year the committee sends a letter to the Legislative Policy Committee outlining what the committee is going to do that interim. And so that would mean that the letter to the LPC would have a paragraph on this bill about what we want to do.
And so what does so I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand, what does,
it's new.
What it often looks like, Delegate Ruth, is that the full committee or the subcommittee would hold a briefing for just to spend time on information gathering, to spend the time that we don't necessarily have during the legislative session to deep dive into the issue. It could be a one-day briefing. It could be a series of briefings, depending on what the the needs are or the outline of the study is. But oftentimes you'll see it as basically an opportunity for a longer type of hearing, briefing, information gathering process that's just done during the interim months to get that background information, to get the follow-up, to get all of the information that's needed for the committee.
You could, usually that letter comes from, what is it, the chairman and the vice chairman, Delegate Stein?
So well, I think the chair, but I'd have to look into that, does submit the letter to the Legislative Policy Committee where it details the proposed activities of the committee. It can include site visits, it can include studies, where there would be a short little summary in this letter that would express the intent of the committee on how they'd like to approach a certain topic.
Delegate Jacobs, I'm sorry, Delegate Ruth.
Would I be able to have input into how that, what we would look into, or who we might have as witnesses, or, call at the hearing briefings, or?
Well, that would have to be discussed with Chair Barbe.
Okay. I certainly support the idea of a summer study. It's just like I said in my testimony, what you study and how you study it, it makes a big difference. And I just want to make sure we're looking at the right things that are going to give the committee the answers that we need in order to further consider this question.
I believe Delegate Jacobs has his hand up,
Yeah.
even though I can't see that.
Yeah, I did, Mr. Chairman. I think procedurally, we need to move unfavorable on this bill as presented. And then there's another decision that's made to go to have this issue in a summer study. But as far as the legislation goes, procedurally, I think you need to move unfavorable. You can check with Christian on that.
Well, I think that was Delegate Stein's motion. It was an unfavorable.
Well, and I did second that earlier, but I just wanted to verify.
Well, that's what we have on the table. And I think withdrawal is something similar, and that can be done between this subcommittee and full committee voting. But
That's correct.
But it really doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. I understand that both Delegate Otto and Delegate Wells have their hands up. Charles?
I took mine down, Mr. Chairman.
I don't believe that. Delegate Wells?
Thank you. No, so I'm okay with the motion on the table, and I just wanted to say though that I do hope that in the study, because it has impact on local government, that we're including the feedback, because I know Baltimore City had raised, they've done some work on this, and they had raised that they still use it very limited. So I'm hoping that that perspective, that type of perspective, will be included in the conversation. I think as we're talking about banning chemicals and specifically limiting that ban to local government, that we should have a diversity of local governments at the table to discuss that if we're going to extend it beyond, just Baltimore County. So I just wanted to make sure I had that on the record.
And these do end up as a chairman's decision, but I think I can support that to him. And Delegate Lehman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to be sure, I guess, I am very supportive of the original bill. I understand that Delegate Ruth is making a difficult decision to, amend it in a way that would be an important first step, and I want to support her in that. I would only want to support I guess, unfavorable if she's in agreement, but I just don't understand why she wouldn't withdraw it instead. And so that, I know my first session, I was advised on a bill of mine by Delegate Barve that, that a bill, my artificial turf bill, definitely needed more work, but that withdrawing it would be better than having it voted down, having the unfavorable, vote recorded for the future.
Yeah, Delegate Lehman, I basically agree with you. I think what we want to do is get it out of subcommittee, and it can be withdrawn easily before full committee votes.
And if the bill is going to be withdrawn, it would have to come from Delegate Young, since Delegate Young is the sponsor.
Okay, so just to clarify, if we vote unfavorably, that just dislodges it from the subcommittee back to the full committee. But that is tied to it. It could still be withdrawn. Kristen, is what you're saying then?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
But Mr. Chairman, we also would be making, the subcommittee would also be making a recommendation for summer study. Isn't that right?
Right. Okay.
That could be the recommendation, but I guess as far as the formality of it, that wouldn't translate into anything. If that's the recommendation before the full committee, there's no formal way to certify that.
Sure, it's the chair's call. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Everyone understand the motion?
Yes. Thank you for explaining.
No, Delegate Ruth, I still don't think of you as a new delegate, but okay, everyone in favor of the motion, aye, or raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, we'll send that out, and Delegate Ruth, let Delegate Young know what we did. I think he may want to withdraw it, but it really doesn't matter. I think,
thank you.
Delegates handle it different ways. Okay, so we still have on the agenda, we have one bill left. Okay, it's the House Bill 512, Coast Smart Siting. We had this hearing last week. Kristen, do you want to tell us what the bill does?
Sure. So House Bill 512 has two parts, really. It would apply the existing Coast Smart siting and design criteria to certain private construction reconstruction projects. And then there's an enforcement component that would establish that DNR has sole responsibility to enforce compliance unless DNR has delegated enforcement authority to a county or municipality. It's
Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had a very insightful conversation with Michael Sanderson from MACO yesterday, because I expressed concern and a little bit of, I guess I was baffled that MACO did not take a position at all on this bill last year and then this year opposed it. So we had a good, candid discussion about it. But since then, I've discovered some additional information through advocates that there are actually, which did not come up in the hearing because I didn't know this, that there are actually 5 jurisdictions in Maryland that are applying at least some Coast Smart siting and design type criteria. 3 actually are on the Eastern Shore, 2 are on the Western Shore. But I would like to ask for the bill to be held just a week so that I can propose an idea to DNR. I have not had a chance to have that conversation with Mr. McKittrick and DNR, but I would like to share some of the information I have been able to put together just in the last 24 hours, and just would ask that the bill be held for a week.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. Does anybody else want to say something about the bill while it's here? We can absolutely hold it, and I know that there are a lot. I know there are a lot of advocates on each side of this issue that are interested. So Delegate Lehman, let us know what you're thinking, and
I will ahead of the next meeting, Mr. Chairman, you know, whether we go the route of an amendment or whether I pull the bill back and try again next year. But I will do that in advance of next week.
Kristen, is that? I have that as we've covered our agenda.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. Thank you all for being here. I see DNR and agriculture and Mako and agriculture again and NAOP. And so thank you all for being here, and everybody have a good day. We'll see you, I guess, next week.